My name is Stephen Collins. I'm 36 years old, and by most accounts, I've made it. From the outside, my life looks perfect. A luxury townhouse nestled in Boston's historic Back Bay. A son who's brilliant and kind. A tech company that went from idea to multi-million-dollar empire. Some people call me a self-made man. But the truth, I was never meant to succeed. I wasn't even supposed to belong. I wasn't born into the Collins family. I was adopted at 3 years old, plucked from the foster system and placed into a home that gave me food, clothes, a roof, but not love. Not from everyone. And that haunted me far longer than any childhood hunger. Peter Collins, my adoptive father, made it painfully clear I wasn't his blood. "You're not my son," he said to me when I was 15, his voice cold and final like a slammed door. I still remember the way his eyes narrowed with disgust when I spilled a glass of water at dinner. The way he'd look at Ryan, his real son, with unspoken pride, and then turn to me with nothing but tolerance. And Ryan, 5 years younger, sharper tongue than most adults I knew. "You're just the spare they picked up." He'd sneer when our parents weren't watching. He always knew how to cut deep and smile while doing it. But there was one light in that house, one person who never treated me like I was temporary. Deborah, my adoptive mother, every night. She'd tuck me in with fairy tales and soft kisses to the forehead, whispering, "You are my gift." Nothing less. And even now, I remember how her hands trembled when she handed me a wrinkled 20 from her teaching paycheck to help me through a rough week in college. That warmth, that unconditional love came only from her. Still, in that house, love came with conditions. And the biggest one was, don't expect anything more than what you were given. When I graduated high school, Ryan got prepped for college. Tutors, college visits, applications paid in full. Me, my father sat me down and said, "We don't have money for both of you. Ryan's the future of this family." I wasn't even mad. I didn't have the luxury of being surprised anymore. So I left home with a suitcase, a resume, and a mountain of doubt packed into my spine. I waited tables, stocked warehouses, ate noodles 4 nights a week, slept on the floor when I couldn't afford a mattress. But here's the thing about pain. It builds something sharper than anger. It forges ambition. I refused to be their afterthought. At 20, I sketched the idea for a platform to give underprivileged kids access to quality tech education. If I couldn't afford college, I'd build something that made sure other kids wouldn't have to choose between survival and dreams. The first version bombed, so did the second. But the third, the one I coded in a crummy apartment on a second-hand laptop, barely sleeping, that one finally caught fire. We got picked up by a small VC out of San Jose, then a larger one, then media. Within 5 years, the platform was in every state, reaching thousands of kids. And just like that, I had what they said I never would: success, legacy, power. But I also had something far more important: my son, Logan. He came into my life like a quiet sunrise. Monica, my then wife, and I believed we were building a new world together. But after my third startup failure, the money dried up. And so did her love. She left us, me and a toddler, without warning. Just a note: "I can't do this anymore." Logan was 3 when he looked up at me and asked, "Where's Mommy?" And I lied. I smiled. I said she was on a trip. I said she'd call soon. But I knew she wasn't coming back. From that day on, it was just me and my boy. We survived in a tiny apartment with peeling paint and leaking windows, where the only warmth came from Logan's laugh and a space heater older than me. Deborah visited us when she could. She'd bring meals in plastic containers, press folded bills into my palm, and whisper, "You are not alone, Stephen. You never were." But Peter and Ryan, they never called, never showed up. When I brought Logan to the old house once, hoping, naively, to build something like family, Peter looked me in the eye and said, "You brought this on yourself." Ryan chuckled and looked at my son in his scuffed sneakers. "Like father, like son," he said. I clenched Logan's hand and walked out. That night, I wrote a promise in my journal. A promise that became a mantra: Logan will never feel like I did. Not under my roof. Not in my world. And I meant it. We grew. We healed. And the business exploded. From free tech education for kids to contracts with schools across the country. Suddenly, the boy in the hand-me-down hoodie became Stephen Collins, founder and CEO, interviews, investments, invitations. People who once ignored me now wanted me on their boards. But what they didn't know is that you can dress up trauma, but you can't erase it. You can buy a townhouse, but not peace. You can succeed and still feel utterly alone. Until one night, under a cascade of fairy lights at a charity gala in downtown Boston, she appeared. Her name was Alexis Monroe. And what she said to me was the first domino in the collapse I never saw coming. The first time I saw Alexis Monroe, she was standing beneath a string of amber lights at the bar of a charity gala we hosted along the Charles River. The jazz band played something low and romantic. The whole room smelled like old money and red wine. She turned her head, caught me glancing, and smiled. "You're Stephen Collins, right?" she asked. I froze because no one ever approached me like that. Not without an agenda. Not without already doing a background check. But her voice was warm. Her tone, curious. Not rehearsed. "I work at a nonprofit that brings education to underfunded rural schools," she said, brushing a lock of gold hair behind her ear. "I've been following your platform since last year. You're changing lives." Her compliment should have felt like every other one I'd gotten since the company blew up, but it didn't. She saw me. Or at least she made me feel that way. That night, we stood side by side at the balcony, glasses of Merlot in hand, watching the waters shimmer under the city lights. "I admire what you built," she said. "Most people wouldn't have gotten back up after failing twice." I didn't know how she found that out. Maybe I'd mentioned it in an interview. Maybe she Googled me. But the way she said it, it felt earned. "Failure builds better bones," I replied. She laughed, light, musical, effortless. We exchanged numbers. And as I walked back to my table, I realized something that caught me off guard. I wasn't thinking about the pitch I'd missed that afternoon. I wasn't thinking about investor reports or media requests. I was thinking about her. The next morning, Logan noticed it immediately. He was sitting at the kitchen counter, scribbling in his sketchbook while munching toast. "You're humming," he said, raising an eyebrow. "I am." "Yup. You never hum. Is it a woman?" I smirked, ruffling his hair. "Maybe." He narrowed his eyes. "Be careful." I laughed it off. But that was the first warning, and I missed it. Our first date was in a cozy little cafe in Back Bay. She wore a navy blue turtleneck and boots that clicked when she walked across the hardwood floor. Nothing flashy, just confident. We talked for hours about books, childhood, foster care, broken families. She told me about a summer spent teaching kids in rural Kentucky. I told her about the time I broke into my school's computer lab at night just to teach myself Python. She listened like every word was worth something. By the second date, she brought Logan a watercolor set. He loves to draw, right? You mentioned that. That gesture, small as it was cut straight through me, no one had ever shown that kind of interest in Logan before. When I introduced them, Logan was polite, shy, even. Afterward, he said, "She's pretty," but there was hesitation in his voice, a quiet twitch at the corner of his mouth. "She smiles a lot," he added. "Too much." "She's just being nice," I replied, brushing it off. But looking back, it wasn't just niceness he was sensing. Logan's intuition was sharper than mine, maybe because he didn't have wounds clouding his judgment, maybe because I was too starved for connection. I didn't just want Alexis to be the one I needed her to be. There's a kind of loneliness that wealth can't fix. You can sit in $1 million living room and still feel like you're screaming underwater. So when someone shows up with soft hands and softer words, when they laugh at your jokes and touch your arm and say all the right things, you want to believe. And I did. We spent more and more weekends together, strolling through Boston Common, taking Logan to the aquarium, sipping coffee while Logan ran ahead, chasing pigeons. She never pushed. She never overstepped. But she always lingered just long enough to leave a trail of trust behind. And every night after she left, I wrote about it in my journal. The same one I started when Monica left. The one where I wrote my fears, Logan's questions, and all the things I never dared say aloud. I think this might be the start of something real. I wrote one night, and below it, in smaller handwriting, "Don't screw this up. Stephen." One evening, we sat on my townhouse rooftop, watching the city breathe. Alexis leaned her head on my shoulder and whispered, "You deserve happiness. I want to be the one who helps you believe in it again." And for a moment, I really did. Until Logan asked me something that cracked my confidence. "Dad," he said one night at dinner, "if Alexis loves you, why doesn't she ask me about my drawings anymore?" "What do you mean?" "She used to. Now she just gives me stuff. Toys, ice cream. That's not the same." I paused, unsure how to answer. "She's trying to be nice," I said. "She's trying too hard," he said back, looking at his plate. "It's fake." I should have listened. I should have looked deeper. Instead, I got defensive. "Logan, she's going to be your stepmom one day. You need to give her a chance." He looked up at me, hurt in his eyes. "You love her more than me now, don't you?" "No," I said, reaching across the table. "Never. I love you more than anything." But the damage was already done. That night, I found him curled under his blanket, sketchbook open, the page half finished. It was a drawing of a boy standing between two adults, one with a fake smile, one looking the other way. It broke my heart, but I told myself he'd adjust, that with time, love would fix the cracks. What I didn't know was that the cracks were already becoming canyons. And Alexis, she wasn't just slipping into our lives. She was studying us. Every move, every weakness, every blind spot. And someone very familiar was guiding her hand over the next few weeks. Things with Alexis moved faster than I expected. Or maybe I just stopped paying attention to the speed altogether. I was floating, high on hope, drunk on the idea of finally having it all: success, love, a complete family. But Logan wasn't floating with me. He started sleeping with his bedroom door locked. His drawings, once colorful scenes of rockets and dogs, turned darker. Jagged lines, faces with no eyes, houses cracked down the middle. I asked him once, gently, "What's this one?" He shrugged. "It's just a dream." But the truth was, he was living in the nightmare. And I was too busy playing make-believe to notice. Alexis became more involved in our lives, but only in curated ways. She'd cook dinner on Thursdays. She'd leave little notes on the fridge with hearts and good luck. Logan in cursive. She even asked about helping with his science project. But when Logan actually tried, when he brought his project out and asked her for help, she glanced at her phone, smiled, and said, "Let's do it later." Sweetie, later never came. I didn't see it as a red flag. I saw it as stress. I saw it as me. Maybe not doing enough to help them connect. So I did what I always do, tried to fix things. I planned a weekend getaway for the three of us. Just a cabin in Vermont, nothing fancy, no cameras, no interviews, just firewood, snow, and time. But Logan was cold the entire trip. He didn't laugh when Alexis slipped in the snow. He didn't smile when she handed him a hot cocoa with extra whipped cream. He didn't say a word when she offered to read him a bedtime story. He just pulled the covers over his head and said, "Good night, Dad." Alexis turned to me that night as we lay in bed. Her voice was soft, like wind slipping through cracked glass. "I don't think your son likes me," she whispered. I swallowed hard. "He's just sensitive. It takes time." She pressed her fingers to my chest. "I'm trying. Stephen." I really am. I wanted to believe her. But when I looked over the next morning and saw her phone buzzing on silent, and she quickly flipped it face down before I could see the screen, a small piece of me flinched. Still, I said nothing. Because the alternative, that this might not be real, was a door I didn't have the strength to open. But Logan had already stepped through that door. One night, I found him outside on the townhouse balcony, curled up in his hoodie with a flashlight and his sketchbook. He looked up when I slid the door open. "Cold out here," I said, sitting beside him. "Warmer than in there," he muttered. I looked down. He had drawn something that stopped my heart for a beat. It was Alexis, but not smiling. Her eyes were sharp, her hands were claws, and behind her stood two shadows, one with square glasses and one with a crooked grin. Peter and Ryan, even sketched in graphite. I recognized them. "What is this?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "She talks to them." I blinked. "What?" "I've seen her. On your phone sometimes. She deletes the messages." "Logan, she's not who you think she is." I stood, heart pounding. "You've been spying on her." He stared at me. His eyes, usually filled with wonder, were now wet with frustration. "You're not listening to me." I didn't know what to say. My instinct was to defend her, to protect this fragile thing I thought we were building. But something in my son's face made my mouth dry up. Later that night, I opened my journal, the same old leather one with the bent corner and folded pages. The one where I'd promised, years ago, Logan will never feel like I did. And now, here he was, drawing monsters in the shape of people I'd brought into his life. I wrote one line. Am I becoming the father I swore I'd never be? The next week, I brought Alexis to meet my family for real. A formal Sunday dinner. Nothing fancy. Just a test to see how she fit into the world I once ran from. Deborah welcomed her with open arms. "You look lovely, dear," she said, pulling out the good china. Peter shook her hand, a little too long. "Smart and beautiful. Stephen, don't let this one go," he said with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. Ryan, of course, was smoother, laid back. "You're a catch," he told Alexis, clapping my shoulder. "Maybe now Stephen will stop working 24/7. Alexis laughed, too loud. And for a moment, I felt the universe align. Maybe this could work. Maybe the pain was behind us. But then Logan spilled a glass of juice. It hit the floor, spreading across the hardwood like a slow-blooming stain. Alexis jumped. Her eyes flashed. And for a split second, just a blink, her lips curled, her brows pinched. Then she smiled again. "It's okay, honey," she said, grabbing a napkin. "It happens." But Logan looked at me, pale. Later, when we were home, he whispered, "She got mad. I saw it. She's pretending." I felt my throat close. Was I pretending too? Because something else felt wrong that night. Something deeper than a fake smile. As I left the dinner, I saw Peter lean into Alexis. I couldn't hear what he said. But she nodded, touched his arm. Too familiar, too aligned. And then Ryan laughed, tossing a wink in their direction. That night, Logan didn't say anything. He didn't need to, because I was finally starting to hear the silence. Some moments in life don't come with loud warnings. Sometimes it's just a look, a hand that lingers too long, a silence that stretches 1 second too far. That was the Sunday night dinner with Alexis, Peter, and Ryan. I didn't say anything when I saw her lean into Peter. I didn't react when Ryan clinked glasses with her like they were old college friends. But something inside me shifted. Like when you realize the floor you're standing on is just a thin layer of glass and there's nothing but knives underneath. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around a cup of coffee I didn't drink. Logan came downstairs. Quiet. He didn't even look at me when he said, "I saw her phone again last night." I stayed silent. He sat across from me. She had a photo of Uncle Ryan on her lock screen. My breath caught. "You're sure?" He nodded. They were sitting close. She was smiling. I should have exploded. Should have run upstairs, demanded an answer, thrown her out. But I didn't, because I still wanted it to be wrong. I still wanted Logan to be mistaken. I still wanted my life, this fragile illusion, to be real. So instead, I waited for her to slip. And she did. 3 nights later, Alexis said she needed to stay late at her nonprofit's office. Big grant meeting, she told me, kissing my cheek. Wish me luck. I waited until her car pulled out of the driveway, then turned to Logan. "You up for something risky?" He looked up from his sketchbook. "You believe me now?" I nodded. "Let's find out the truth together." It was the first time in months I saw the corner of his mouth twitch upward. We didn't follow her ourselves. I had too much to lose to be sloppy. Instead, I gave Logan an old phone of mine, one I'd wiped clean and reinstalled with a hidden GPS tracker app. Next time you see her phone, plug this in. Just a couple minutes. 2 days later, Logan came into my office with the calm precision of a soldier. "It's done," he said. I pulled up the app, heart pounding, waited. The first 3 pings were normal. Her office, a grocery store, a coffee shop in the seaport. But then the Beacon Hotel, Room 314. I blinked. That wasn't the office. I drove there an hour later, alone, parked across the street, waited, watched. At 7:42 p.m., I saw her walk out of the hotel, hair down, different clothes than she wore that morning, smiling at someone behind her. That someone stepped out into the glow of the streetlight. Ryan. He wrapped an arm around her waist like it was nothing. My blood went cold. They laughed, got into a black SUV, drove off. I sat there, unmoving, hands clenched around the steering wheel. So tight, I thought it would snap. And suddenly I wasn't in my car anymore. I was 15, standing in our old living room. Peter yelling, "You're not my son." Ryan sneering, "They picked you up from the leftovers." And now here I was, all over again. The one who got picked and tricked. I drove home, hands shaking. That night, I opened my journal again. The old one. The same journal that held every chapter of my comeback. And I wrote, "This time, I won't be the victim." The next morning, I called my lawyer, a friend I trusted, discreet. I had him run a private investigation on Alexis Monroe. Real name, history, affiliations. I told him I needed answers quietly. "Get me proof," I said, "and prepare a contingency for asset protection." Then I did something harder than anything else. I told Deborah. We sat on the townhouse porch, her hands wrapped around a chipped mug. I could see the sadness already forming in her eyes before I spoke. "She's not who she says she is," I said. She nodded slowly. "You knew." I didn't want to. She looked out at the street, then back at me. "Do you have a plan?" "I will." She reached out, covered my hand with hers. "Then we'll face it together." That night, Alexis came over with takeout and wine. She laughed like usual, kissed my cheek, told me she missed me. I smiled, acted normal. But inside, I was memorizing her expressions, logging her eye movements, timing her lies, because I already knew what was coming. 3 days later, Logan gave me the last piece of the puzzle. He'd followed her, quietly, phone in hand, behind bushes, around resort walls. He had photos. Alexis and Peter, meeting on a bench by the Charles River. Alexis and Ryan, sitting too close in a hotel lounge. A screenshot of a text. "He's eating it up. Wedding soon. Then we move." And suddenly everything clicked. The warmth, the perfect smiles, the gifts, the praise, the fake support from Peter. Ryan's sudden friendship. They weren't reconnecting. They were recruiting, using Alexis to worm into my life, to marry me, to take the company, the money, the legacy, and then cut me out. Just like I was never part of them to begin with. That night, I stared at Logan across the dinner table. "You saved me," I said. He blinked. "What do we do now?" And for the first time in a long time, I had clarity. "We don't run," I said. "We expose them." The wedding was set for 5 days in the Maldives. A white sand resort straight out of a magazine spread over water villas, floating breakfasts, Instagram-perfect sunsets. Alexis insisted on it being an unforgettable celebration. She had no idea just how unforgettable it would be. I didn't cancel. I didn't confront. I didn't explode. Because this wasn't about anger anymore. It was about justice with an audience. Logan and I flew out 2 days early. He brought his sketchbook and that same second-hand phone he'd used to gather every shred of truth. I brought a flash drive and something heavier clarity. We checked into a private villa overlooking the turquoise water. On the outside, I smiled, toasted champagne, held Alexis's hand like nothing was wrong. On the inside, I was cataloging every guest, every detail, every move. The guest list included our family, tech investors, media, and a handful of board members from my company. The very people they were planning to use in their post-wedding power transfer. They didn't know I already moved 80% of my assets into a trust fund in Logan's name, protected under a clause that voided any claim if marriage fraud was proven. They didn't know my Boston lawyer had flown in under an alias. They didn't know I had paid the resort's tech team to help me schedule a surprise video tribute on the wedding stage. They didn't know I was watching them burn their own rope. Day 1 cocktail party under the stars. Alexis disappeared mid-event for 2 hours. I played dumb. Logan followed. Quiet shoes, hoodie up, phone recording. She met with Peter on the beach, under the moonlight. Everything's going smoothly, Peter said. That idiot Steven suspects nothing. Alexis laughed softly. He proposed. The rest is easy. Logan caught it all. The next morning, he showed me the footage. His hands were trembling. He wasn't a kid anymore. He was a witness, a partner. I cupped his face. You did good, buddy. I just want it to stop, he whispered. It will, I promise. Day 2 beach games. Smiling faces, photographers. Ryan slapped my back, handed me a mimosa, and grinned. Big day coming, bro. You ready? More than ever, I said. And I meant it. That evening, I sat at my laptop and edited the footage with Logan. Audio clips, photos, screenshots of texts, hotel security stills from Boston. A contract, yes. An actual contract Alexis had signed with Peter and Ryan to split profits post-wedding. Buried inside a drawer, Logan had seen her hide behind a hairdryer. We turned it all into a clean 3-minute clip. No voiceover, no narration, just truth. Then we embedded a QR code on the final frame with the words, "If you doubt what you saw, scan this." I handed the flash drive to the AV tech at the resort. Play this when I give the cue, I said, no matter what. He nodded. Understood. I didn't sleep much that night. Neither did Logan. We sat outside, wrapped in blankets, listening to the waves lap against the stilts beneath our villa. I'm proud of you, I told him. He looked at me, his face lit only by moonlight. I'm proud of you. The wedding day arrived like a storm pretending to be sunshine. Everyone dressed in white. Chairs lined up on the beach, cameras ready. Champagne flutes catching sunlight like tiny daggers. Peter wore a linen suit. Ryan, sunglasses and confidence. Alexis walked toward me in a silk gown. Hair curled just enough. Smile weaponized. The officiant stood between us, reading words that sounded like fiction. And then, before the vows, I raised my hand. Sorry, I said. Before we begin, I have something I want to share. There was a ripple of murmurs. Alexis blinked, unsure. I nodded to the AV tech. The screen behind us flickered. The music stopped. The footage played. Peter's voice. He suspects nothing. After the wedding, we'll move. Alexis's voice. He proposed. The rest is easy. Just pay me what you promised. Ryan's voice. Don't worry. He's just a foster freak with money. Soon, it'll all be ours. Gasps. Phones came out. Flashes went off. The clip ended with the contract. The QR code. Silence. Then chaos. Alexis dropped her bouquet. Stephen, Save it, I said. Peter stood up, red-faced. This is fake. You edited it. Ryan pushed past the chairs. He's trying to destroy us. He's jealous. But the guests weren't looking at them. They were looking at me, at Logan, who now stood beside me, chin high, at Deborah, who rose from the front row with tears in her eyes. My lawyer stepped forward, handing papers to Peter and Ryan. Mr. Collins, he said, you've been served. Fraud, conspiracy, attempted theft. I turned to the crowd. This was never a wedding. This was an ambush. And now, it's over. Peter tried to charge, but security stopped him. Ryan cursed and tried to run, but the media swarmed. Alexis, she just collapsed into the sand, the wind pulling at her veil like it wanted her gone. I held Logan's hand as we walked off the stage. People clapped, some in shock, some out of respect, some out of sheer disbelief. But I didn't look back, because what mattered now was ahead of me. We flew back to Boston the next morning. No champagne, no confetti. Just silence and the hum of the private jet slicing through the clouds. Logan sat beside me, his head resting against my arm, sketchbook in his lap. He didn't say much, but every few minutes, he'd glance up at me as if checking whether I was still there. I was more present than I'd ever been. My phone buzzed non-stop calls from media outlets, tech bloggers, shareholders, friends. Stephen, is it true? Do you want to comment? Can we run a feature on how you exposed them? I ignored them all. The story was already everywhere. Tech CEO exposes wedding conspiracy fiancé. Father. Brother involved in multi-million-dollar fraud attempt. The world had seen it all. Live from paradise. But now came the real reckoning. We landed in Boston and drove straight home. Deborah was waiting at the door. She pulled Logan into a long, trembling hug, then turned to me. You did the right thing, she said. Her voice was soft but firm. I should have done it sooner. No, she said. You did it when it mattered. That night, we sat down to dinner, just the three of us. Homemade lasagna, garlic bread, Logan's favorite. It wasn't celebration food. It was healing food. I looked around the table, and for the first time in what felt like years, I saw family. Not because of blood, not because of contracts or ceremonies, but because we chose each other. Over the following weeks, the fallout hit fast. Peter lost everything. Deborah filed for divorce and refused any settlement. The court granted her full rights to the house and her retirement. She didn't want his money. She just wanted out. Peter tried to call her, left voicemails, sent flowers. I was wrong. Deborah, please. I didn't mean for it to go that far. She never answered. His name became a punchline in the local business community. The father who betrayed his adopted son for a piece of the pie. He stopped showing his face in public. Rumor had it he tried to sell the house, but no one wanted to buy from that guy from the wedding scandal. Even his siblings cut ties. Peter Collins, once so proud of his last name, was now a ghost in his own city. Ryan, his fall was even steeper. He lost his job at a Boston finance firm the day after the news broke. We don't employ liars, his boss reportedly said. His apartment lease was revoked. His social circle vanished. He tried to get hired elsewhere, but every recruiter Googled his name and found the same thing. Ryan Collins, the brother who plotted to steal a fortune. I heard he moved out west, Montana, maybe doing odd jobs, using a fake name. He sent me an email once. Subject line, I was stupid. Please. The body, I lost everything. Give me a second chance. I deleted it without reading the rest. As for Alexis, she disappeared for a while. But the internet doesn't forget. Her name trended for days. Her social media accounts were flooded with comments. Gold digger, fake fiancé of the year, Gasser Maldives meltdown. Her clients, whoever she still had, ditched her. I found out later she moved to New York. Tried to rebrand herself under a new name. Didn't work. Her face had already been burned into the public memory. She reached out once, too. Not to apologize. Not really. Just a voicemail. Stephen. I didn't mean for it to get that far. They manipulated me. I actually liked you. Maybe in another life. I deleted it. Because she didn't just break my heart. She almost broke my son. And Logan. Logan began to heal. We started a new bedtime routine instead of me reading to him. He read to me. Sometimes it was stories. Sometimes it was just his thoughts, scribbled in the back of his sketchbook. I'm glad it's just us and Grandma, he said one night. I smiled. Me too. We spent weekends exploring Boston again. The Common. The Museum of Science. A weekend trip to Cape Cod. We built sandcastles. We got sunburned. We laughed. One afternoon, Logan came up to me with a drawing. It was the three of us, him, me, Deborah, standing together under a sun, holding hands. Above it, he'd written my real family. I framed it, hung it in the hallway, right where I used to keep my degrees. Because this was worth more than any diploma, any award, any headline. Then came the final twist. One afternoon, while cleaning out a drawer, I found my old journal, the one I started when Monica left, the one I kept through every storm. I flipped it open to a page I didn't remember writing. I'm scared that success will cost me the people I love. And right under it, if it does, it's not worth it. I stared at those words for a long time, because somehow I almost let it happen again. I chased love so desperately. I nearly missed the love already beside me. But this time I didn't lose. This time I listened. This time I chose right. Some mornings, I still wake up expecting the other shoe to drop. That's what trauma does. Even when the fire is out, the smoke lingers. But lately, when I open my eyes and hear Logan humming in the kitchen, or smell coffee brewing from Mom's corner of the townhouse, I feel something I haven't in years. Stillness, not silence, not emptiness. Stillness, a peace earned, not given. Our lives didn't just go back to normal after the scandal. There is no going back. But we did something better. We built forward. We turned the townhouse into a home. Logan has his own room, covered in art prints, sketch pads, and a corkboard with pinned-up dreams, design my own comic book. Travel to Japan. Eat ramen in Tokyo. Deborah moved in permanently. Her bedroom is filled with fresh plants, her tea cabinet, and the armchair she used to sit in when she told me bedtime stories decades ago. And me. I cleared out my old office, replaced the awards with Logan's drawings, hung his real family sketch front and center. It reminds me every day that I didn't lose everything. I finally found what matters. There's something I haven't told you yet. A few weeks after we returned from the Maldives, I opened a new trust fund, not for myself, not even for Logan, for kids like me. I called it the Deborah Foundation. It funds full scholarships and mentoring programs for children in foster care who want to study technology, education, or the arts. The three things that saved me. When I told Mom, she cried. I didn't do anything special, she said. wiping her eyes. I shook my head. You did everything. And in her honor, we added a small line to every scholarship letter. You are not alone. You are never just the extra. You are the heart. Because that's what I used to feel like, the spare, the backup plan, the one they picked up, not the one they dreamed of. But now I know sometimes the ones who aren't chosen become the ones who change the world. There's another thing I've started doing. Writing again. Not just journal entries, but letters. To Logan. I leave them in an old leather notebook on his nightstand. 1 page a week. Some are stories, some are confessions. Some are just thoughts I want him to carry when I'm not around. One of them reads, "Son, I once chased love so hard, I nearly lost yours. Thank you for pulling me back. Thank you for teaching me to listen." He doesn't always respond. Sometimes he just gives me a long hug in the kitchen the next morning, and that's enough. I get asked sometimes interviews, podcasts, conferences. Stephen, do you regret what happened? It's a complicated question. Do I regret being betrayed by the people who raised me? Yes. Do I regret falling for someone who wore a mask? Yes. But do I regret uncovering the truth, facing it head on? Letting it nearly destroy me so I could rebuild better? No. Because that pain gave me something pure. It gave me perspective. That money can amplify, but never manufacture love. That blood doesn't make family, choice does. That listening to your child may be the most important decision you'll ever make. One evening, Logan asked me a question that stopped me cold. We were sitting by the fireplace. He was sketching some kind of robot-dragon hybrid. And he looked up and said, "Dad, would you ever marry again?" I took a breath. "I don't know," I said honestly. "Would you let me help choose?" he asked, half joking. I chuckled. "You're officially the first one I'd ask." He nodded seriously. "Good. Because I'd know." Then he paused, looked down, and I'd protect you again. No matter what. That cracked something open inside me. Not in a sad way. In a way that made me realize he became the protector I once wished for. Not because I trained him to be tough, but because he watched the world try to take his father, and he said no. I'm not looking for love right now, but I'm not closed off either. I don't need perfect. I just need real. Someone who doesn't flinch at broken pieces. Someone who loves the quiet parts of life. Not gala lights or company shares. Maybe I'll meet her at a bookstore. Maybe at Logan's school open house. Maybe not at all. And that's okay, because I've already found the greatest loves of my life, my son and my mother. So if you've made it this far, if you've walked with me through every twist, every betrayal, every scar, let me leave you with this. Family isn't blood. Family is who shows up when the world turns cold. It's who sees your flaws and stays anyway. It's who tells you, "You're not just enough, you're everything I needed." It's a kid who follows a liar across a resort because he refuses to lose his dad. It's a woman who slips money into your palm even when she has none to spare. It's the sound of laughter over lasagna after the storm has passed. That's family. Not the ones who share your DNA, but the ones who share your burdens. So, to anyone out there who's ever felt like the outsider, the spare, the backup plan, I see you. And you are not alone. This was my story. But maybe it's yours too. If it is, tell me in the comments. What did you survive? And more importantly, who stood by you when it all fell apart? Let's honor them. And maybe, just maybe, let's become that person for someone else. Because in the end, revenge may win the day, but only love builds something that lasts. Thanks for listening. We're just getting started.